Hey everyone, welcome back to another video for Architecture 5610. So if we're trying to make a 3D model and we're referencing an image that is a single point perspective image, there's a few things that we can do to try to understand them. This example here is a good example because it actually was a drawn, like hand-drawn sort of perspective drawing. So now trying to interpret this as something three-dimensional, there's a lot of cues that we can use within this drawing to understand what's happening. So to do this, the first step is to look and figure out what the horizon line would be and also where the vanishing point is. So that would be kind of where this horizon line, as we can see I've drawn it here, it's really where all of the perspective lines kind of mediate themselves to become perfectly horizontal. And then the same thing is going to happen in the vertical axis here. You can see this one's still kind of slightly off. So I've drawn another curve that I'm assuming to be a little bit closer to the vertical line of this vanishing point. So this is the vertical axis and the horizontal axis intersecting, and now we have the vanishing point of this drawing. So next, what you can start to do is draw a few sorts of geometries that would help regulate what else is going on. So a few things to look at, tile, you have to interpret this as like, is it rectangular or is it square? If we look at this moment here at the far back, it's a little bit bolder line in this location and then a bolder line here. And it's kind of hard to tell whether this is a square tile. We can tell that the vertical tile is a square, and as any kind of perspective, single point perspective drawing would show, any kind of vertical and horizontal element that is perfectly parallel to the viewing plane is going to just be orthogonal lines. But so then everything that kind of recedes back into space is going to connect with this vanishing point. So I already drew a line here, but if I connect this line to the vanishing point and I kind of try to draw a line somewhere where this wall is ending, and you want to turn ortho off, you can see that, this line isn't matching up perfectly, but it is fairly close. And that could just be something about a little bit of issues with the image itself. Maybe the scan isn't perfectly clean, or maybe it's slightly rotated or something. But so we have the vanishing point. We can kind of draw one line to generalize where that wall might be and where it's lining up with. And then we can do the same thing for the other side. So I'm going to click on that vanishing point, and then I have this rectangle that I've drawn around the outside to kind of frame everything and just to give me a point to snap to. And now if I turn the near object snap on, I can kind of look at the images, or the geometry in the image, and try to line this up. And I think that's a pretty good point there. I'll hit enter. And so now I have this line and this line kind of forming my ground plane in this image. And then I also drew this rectangle, or this square almost, and I'm trying to understand where this kind of back wall is lining up with everything. And so all you can really do is draw these kind of lines that are headed towards the vanishing point, and then reinterpret the walls as best as Rhino can handle. And so I just drew a square. I think originally I did the square from center, and so I'll just start from that vanishing point, or a rectangle from center. And so now I just am clicking somewhere here. Like I couldn't click there because that's not actually on this line, so I could have picked this point, or I kind of mediated the two and went with that point. And then you can use scale 1D, and you will make some adjustments and just make sure that these things are lining up as best as you can get them to. But you can see like now it's a little bit tall for the middle, even though it kind of seemed correct. It doesn't quite seem so correct over here. So I think, it's kind of a losing battle to keep going around and continuously figure out what might be skewed. I think what you could potentially be doing is you could go into like Illustrator or Photoshop and manipulate these images to a grid within Photoshop or Illustrator and try to skew them and make sure that what's meant to be orthogonal is truly orthogonal. But for the sake of this video, I'll just kind of skip along. So another thing to think about is if you end up with like a door, for example, what we don't really know is the size of anything. We're just kind of going off of like, oh, well, relative to this, it's around this size. So the thing that's useful is if a door is supposed to swing from its opening, I'm going to at least first assume that this drawing was drawn very well, and so I'll do a rectangle from 3 points, and I'll draw the door as if it's closed first, and then I will go into my next view a little later on in this video, and I'll rotate that video or that rectangle and try to get it to line up, or at least see if it starts to line up with how the perspective and the kind of camera is affecting this door in space. So basically you just want to kind of start here. You could do the same thing, kind of pick up these windows, draw a perspective kind of line from the vanishing point, do the same thing for the top and the bottom, do the same thing for the vertical, all things that will help. And then once you have that, you'll move over into a perspective view like the one I have here, and we'll start trying to figure out where things really go. And so you're kind of looking at this and you're probably wondering, you know, what is happening here. So what I'm going to be doing is creating an aligned render. So, or an aligned view in perspective that lines up with this single point perspective of this image. So to do that, I drew those, the horizontal line and that vertical line, and then I'm going to place a point, which I already did, at the intersection of those. So there's that point right there. And then I just use the gumball. I grab, in my case, the green arrow while holding Alt, and I can drag a copy of it, as you well know by now. I'm going to delete that one because I already did it over here. And now I'm going to go over to the drop down next to perspective, and I will go down to set camera, and we're looking for place camera and target. So I'm placing essentially the viewpoint where the camera is, and also where it's looking at. So you want to turn the point object snap on, and you'll first click the point that you copied that is a distance away, and you'll next click the point that is at that vanishing point. And now we can see that things are all lined up. You'll see that we can kind of make some adjustments, but we can see that we are perfectly lined up. This horizon line is centered to my screen, and the vertical line, if I had drawn it again, which I can actually do right now, will be centered to my screen. Or actually I can't do it because you'd want to be in front view. And you'll have to kind of toggle back and forth between front or right, or whichever view you are aligning this to. But so here we go. I'm going to go over here to my properties, and I don't have anything selected. I just am here in Rhino, nothing selected. I'm in the properties window, and now this is actually the view properties, and I can change the lens length. So I'm going to change this to like a common camera millimeter. If you are familiar with photography, you've probably heard of a 35 millimeter lens. I'm going to go with that and test that, and it will change my kind of view here, and we'll zoom out a little bit, and we can keep changing this and see what it does. So I'm going to change this to 20. Now we get a little bit more context, but you can see that I have this curve drawn here, and I actually just have this curve as, well, actually let's check it in perspective, or in by by skewing the camera. So that curve is actually, you know, it's not a straight line. It's a line that is on that image. And now that I've messed up my camera, I'm going to have to go back and do that place camera and target again. And you always have to do that. You don't want to pan or shift. You don't want to pan or orbit or anything once you place the camera in the target, because then you're going to mess it up. But so that line is drawn on my image, but you could see that it was lined up with my wall, which I had just drawn orthogonally. It wasn't skewed or anything. It was just the lens perspective doing that for me. So here we go. Let's place the camera, place the target, hit OK here, and here we are. So this wall is perfectly lined up with, or as close as we can tell, lined up with that line below. And I can do scale 1D, and we can kind of extend it so it like passes through the frame. And you'll kind of want to do that if it's you guys will be referencing a movie image, but you could very easily, you know, kind of look back at this video and understand kind of formally what's happening, and then apply that to any kind of perspective shot, anything that a camera, any camera taken sort of photograph, video that's paused, screenshot of something. There's always going to be a perspective sort of thing happening. Sometimes you'll get slightly confusing perspective of like a 2-point perspective if you're like looking at the corner of a building, for example. But you know, if you're looking through a door, looking down a hallway, etc., it'll be kind of like this. But so I just drew these. I'm going to hide that real quick so you can kind of see what's going on. And so that seems to be lined up fairly well. I'll slide it over a little bit and you can see how well or how poorly it's lining up. So it looks like it lines up pretty well. The challenge is then, okay, well now I need to make those windows, all these other things. So then you might want to go into like a ghosted viewport. And then if you are modeling these things, the easy way to do it, right, would just be to draw in 3D on top of what you've already kind of built. So I've already built that wall. I'm just going to try to draw this door opening and see how well we can get that lined up just by staring at it in perspective. And just to make sure that it's properly intersecting everything, I'm just going to extend it using the gumball tool, and I'll do Boolean difference and make that opening there, and I'll delete that door. So, you know, not bad. I could do move face or a number of commands to kind of manipulate that and like tune that in. But for the sake of the video, it's close enough. But yeah, so I could do the same thing to all of these doors. As I was mentioning a moment ago, right? If I'm going to go to right view for a moment and actually change this to front. Okay, there's where we'll end up with a different version of an image. But so I'm going to go over here, and I forgot to bring that door over, so I'm just going to use the rectangle tool from 3-point, and or is it there? No, it's not. Okay. Here we go. Okay, so I drew the rectangle, and now I'm going to go back to the perspective view, and I still haven't moved anything, so I know I'm good. And what you should also do, once you have this set up, you can go to set view, and then you can go to named view. And then once you're in named view, you can go save as. And so I will call this Arch 5610 2022 and hit OK, and there's that view. So you can always, if you close out of this and then say you orbit on accident, you'll see this asterisk pop up right here, which means like, hey, the saved view and what you're looking at are now different. So now you go to set view, and you'll go to that saved named view, and it'll take you right back to where you were. So I drew that rectangle. I'm going to type in extrude curve. I have a little shortcut for it. And I'm going to, let's see, I'm going to say -1 foot. That seems dramatic. How about -3 inches? Okay. Did it work? I think I missed the solid command, possibly. Okay, it's just kind of confusing because it is overlapping with this image. I should also, as a reminder, I should make this image mostly transparent so we can tell if I've modeled stuff on top of it. Here we go. So now I'm going to use the rotate command, and I'm going to select the corner point of that, and maybe I'll just go over to perspective view for a second. And now I can click that point. I can click the second point, and then I will quickly go back to that specific view I was in. Oh, it doesn't remember. Okay. So, try that again. So, here's the interesting thing. I've rotated the door. I've drawn the door where it was. And we can still see that for some reason, I'm just going to zoom in, that it's not quite lined up with how we'd expect. I mean, it's close, but it's not exactly as low as we would have thought. So let's go back. But yeah, as you can see, that door is trying to extend a little bit more. So, you know, maybe that's something about the way that this was drawn or some sort of interpretation of it. If we extend the door vertically, you can see it's not going to really get to where that is. We tried maybe moving this over. And I mean, it's close. I think it's close enough. And you'd have to just do the same thing with all of these doors. But I think the easiest way to kind of start the process would be, and you know, it might help to just turn off some of the object snaps, and like turn off Smart Track if it's trying to snap to too many things. But yeah, you can do the same thing with this other door. Use the rotate command, and we'll just have to see how close it gets. And it looks like actually the start of the door is not quite where it should be. So let me do scale 1D. Move that to here. I'll do rotate. Try that again. And here we see that this is quite a bit more dramatic for some reason than that. So I will say that I think that the way that this drawing was made, things were a little bit skewed, or maybe exaggerated for the sake of the drawing. That could be why there's this other kind of line here. But either way, it's kind of it's a good starting point to try to understand these things. But so in your projects, you know, see what you can do, and you'll also want to just kind of, if there's people in there, you'll want to kind of look at the people. You could kind of assume how tall a person is or something like that, and kind of use that as a system to understand the scale of a space. I know that you guys will be looking at Blade Runner. I forget the name of the actor, but Google the actor, look up how tall he is, and then maybe use that as a way to scale in the drawing and in the model. But okay, cool.